Welcome back. Here we are again. It's a bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It feels like it for me anyway. So on my bench this morning I've got a 5JJ Yamaha R1, a really nice one actually. There's a few things arguably not great about it. It's got a cheap and nasty-ish under tray on it. The can isn't great, but apart from that it's all original, nice-ish condition. Anyway, to the point, the guy bought this about 6 months ago. It wasn't a barn find, but I don't think it had been used for quite a long time. It had been in a collection, or I don't know, it'd been an ornament for somebody. Anyway, he used to have one back in the day, similar story that we hear often. He had one back in the day. This is the owner I'm talking about now. He had one back in the day, sold it, regretted selling it, wanted another one. Anyway, he's found this one. He bought it 6 months ago, hasn't done anything with it at all, hasn't even washed it. He just parked it up. He decided to try and get it going and, you know, start bringing it back around. Turns the ignition on, fuel pissing out the bottom of it. He's got as far as taking the top of the air box off, as far as I can tell, because that's not connected to the bike, it's in a cardboard box. And I think he's probably, I'm reading between the lines, but I think he's probably capable, bloody hell, I can't speak. He's probably capable of doing the work himself, but he's found me, and I think I'm just the easier option rather than him having to fight himself. So my job is to just make it run properly. The rest of it needs love. It's stood for a very long time, but I'm not getting involved with that. He just wants the carburation side of things, you know, sorted out so it starts and runs nicely. Let me stop waffling. Let's get the tank up, and because he's got the top off the airbox, let's get the tank up, get our peepers on it. Let's see where the fuel's pissing out of when we turn the ignition on, because you turn the ignition on, you can hear the pump go clickety click click, and it's weeing all over the floor. Let's do that and I'll bring you back in. Okay, the tank is off, so we can get a better look at what's going on. Wow, it's not clean is the most polite way of putting it. It's pretty manky and mouldy under there. 25-year-old fuel filter by the looks of it. Right, I've got a fuel supply hooked up to it. Let's turn the fuel on to it, see what happens. Turn the fuel pump on. See where this fuel is coming out of. Whoa, hang on a minute. What is happening? I've got multiple... Holy smoke, it's pissing out of one of these pipes. That's weird. And it's dripping down the side of the engine here. What on earth? Isn't that one of these two pipes? Right, hang on a minute. Let's get this airbox out of the way so we can get a better eyeball of what's going on. It's leaking from multiple places. Right, let's get this out of the way and I'll bring you back in. I'm not completely sure that that has helped in any way. So it must be, I think it's leaking from these breathers. And they go down to this little catch tank here, and then I think there's a pipe out the bottom of the catch tank. The 4XV, the model before this, just went down and vented to atmosphere, but it looks like they're making some sort of an extra effort to contain the fuel if it leaks out. Okay, I think the sensible thing to do, let's disconnect these breathers. It's really hard to hold a camera, and let's get this camera on a tripod. I think that's sort of a half decent view. Let's pull these breathers off here. I mean, either way the carbs are coming off, but I do want to see where it's leaking from. I think that's sensible before I start tearing into it. The fuel back on. It was leaking even without the fuel pump running. Oh yeah, where's... Ah, you see that? It's pissing out of I think you're getting there. Oh, hang on, the camera's a bit low. Let me zoom in for you. Turn the fuel on. See there? It's pissing out that breather pipe. Get that out of the way. You can see that, can't you? Right, turn the fuel off quick. And then I think it was leaking from two places, wasn't it? It was running down the side of the engine and out of that pipe. This little angled T-piece thing here is, go up a bit with a camera. God, I'm such a good cameraman, it's incredible. Yeah, this little plastic T here doesn't seal very well, so I think it's leaking externally and down that pipe. Anyway, what was I going to say? I had a top tip in my brain. I'll tell you what it was. Let's zoom back out again. God, I'm excelling myself here with this camera work today. What did I want to say? Carburetors that are overflowing. If it's this design where the carb is a kind of downdraft carb into the cylinder, you need to be really, really careful that... What am I trying to say? I'm going away. I'm going to have a cup of tea and I'm going to come back with my thoughts in order. Bye. Okay. What I was trying to say was, if you've got this setup where the carburetors are effectively a downdraft carburetor, meaning that the inlet track is vertical, not horizontal, what can happen if you've got leaky float needle valves, or for some reason the carburetor can't maintain the fuel level in the float bowl, as the fuel level comes up, rather than the fuel leaking externally, I mean this is leaking externally, you saw it coming out of the breather pipe at the top, but what's also happening at the same time is it's leaking, I can't show you because I can't be bothered to move the camera, but it's also coming up the emulsion tube and leaking down into the inlet. If the inlet valve's open, it's going to get into the combustion chamber. It's going to do two things. It's going to fill the combustion chamber up, which may mean you'll try and start it and it will hydraulic. Now, generally speaking, I mean, it's a pain in the arse. You've got to take the plugs out and dry it out and things. It doesn't tend to do damage, but it's not impossible. Phone, sorry. I literally cannot... I need to speak to that man in a minute. I literally cannot film anything without my phone going off, so I'm just gonna keep going. Or am I? Oh God. Oh my God, seriously. Danny boy. You're live on YouTube, mate. You just interrupted fucking filming me. You're all right?
I just thought I had a sinking feeling that arrow system in there, it has got the fitting instructions and that with it, hasn't it?
I don't need fitting instructions. I'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll find them online if necessary.
Right. I didn't know whether the fitting instructions had things like the springs and stuff in it with it. You see?
Oh, I see. Hang on. Let's have a look in the box. Stand by.
Okay, bub.
Sorry, this is my life, constant interruptions. It's just how it is. This is why it's so difficult to film a bloody YouTube video. Where was I up to? Hydraulicking. It's bad, but it's not necessarily that bad. So if it happens to you, don't panic too much. People will tell you that you'll bend conrods and damage bearings, and generally it's fine. The starter motors don't have, on these things, on motorbikes generally, don't have enough torque to do any damage. Might be a different story if it's a diesel engine in something. It's not really my field of expertise, that. But generally speaking, with a bike, if you do hydraulic it, it's not the end of the world. The other thing that's happening is that fuel that's in the combustion chamber is leaking down past the piston rings and it's contaminating the oil, which is a very bad thing. So if you have any suspicion at all that you may have contaminated engine oil, do not run your engine, okay? That's the top tip. If the carburetors, the inlet track is through the carb is horizontal, generally the carbs will leak externally and not flood the fuel into the cylinder, if that makes sense. That's all I wanted to say. I'm going to get these carburetors off now and get them on the bench. There's little point in doing anything else now. They're going to come completely apart. Split all the bodies from one another. Do the fuel distribution O-rings. I'll show you on the bench when they're apart. The O-rings on the float needle valves, seats, etc. You've seen it a million times before, I'm sure, but I'll show you it. Might be fun. And then there's a few bits of pipe I want to replace. The main fuel pipe from the fuel tank to the filter is a bit gash. Put a new fuel filter on it, that sort of thing. The guys provided me with a new set of spark plugs, so I'll put those in. We need to check the oil, make sure the oil hasn't been contaminated. The telltale usually is if the oil level's too high in the sight glass or on the dipstick, and you can usually smell, if you take the filler cap off the, where you put the oil in and have a good sniff, you can usually smell the fuel in there. If you're in any doubt, just change the oil. Right, onwards. Okay, carburetors are off. They're in a bit of a sorry state by the looks of them. There's also a very strong argument. Oh, that slide was stuck. Oh, and that one is. Oh, I think there might be a bit minging inside. What was I saying? There's a very strong argument for, get that to focus on there, getting some new inlet manifold rubbers. They're a bit rock hard, and yeah, I'll see what's available, so that might happen. Right, let's get these things torn down, see what we're up against. How many times do I have to bloody tell you about these JIS screwdriver bits? Just go and buy some already. Honestly, you'll thank me. That did not want to come out with a normal screwdriver. In fact, I'm just going to undo them all this way. Wowzers, that was a bit of a mission. These are very manky. Not happy at all. So completely stripped. So I'm going to be replacing all the O-rings on all the distribution pipes. I was thinking of maybe just cleaning the float needle valves, seats, and putting new O-rings on them, but they look, that'll focus, they look really corroded and horrible. It's not worth fighting. So new float needle valve seats, and the valvey things, these, they come as a set if you didn't know. All the O-rings, yeah, and just a really, really good clean. So I'm going to soak them chemically, get some carb juice down all the orifices, leave that overnight. Probably most of tomorrow. I've got other stuff to be doing. I'll just keep, when I'm walking past, I'll just keep flooding these with carb cleaner through all the drillings like you've seen me do a million times before, and then we'll cook them in a hot ultrasonic tank for a bit of a final clean. Load of new parts, put them back together. I did have a massive fight with one of the mixture screws in this carburetor. I had to get busy with a map gas torch. It was seized solid, but you gently heat. Anyway, not going to get into it, but that, yeah, a little bit of a fight getting them apart. They're not in great condition, it's got to be said. Right, I'll carry on with this. I'll bring you back in when everything's clean and I've got all the parts and they're ready to go together. Happy days. Wow, these carburetors are in a bad way. So it's the next day. Every time I walk past, I give them an extra little snifter of carb cleaner, and we're starting to, the varnish is coming out of them slowly. Look at the state of these. So the float needle valve seats I'm not going to reuse. It turns out, I'm not sure how, but I've got some genuine Yamaha ones in stock that I've had for a while. So I'm going to use those, but the rest of the brass needs to be cleaned, obviously. just keep picking away at these with chemicals till I'm confident all the varnish is dissolved, and then I'll put them in the hot ultrasonic tank. I can't get, annoyingly, I can't get these inlet manifold rubbers anytime soon. They seem to be out of stock everywhere, but these are actually, they're quite rubbery still. I'm going to give them a clean up, see if I can save them. I really want to use new. I can get genuine Yamaha, but they're £50 each, whereas the aftermarket set, the Tormax set, which are essentially the same part, it's £50 for 4 of them. I might have a bit more of a hunt around, see if I can find somebody with them in stock, even if I've got to pay full retail for them, you know, and not get any trade discount. Right, that's where I'm up to. Onwards. Okie dokie. So it's the day after, the day after, the day after, the day after. Everything's clean. Carbs have been, well, you saw, chemical to death. They've been cooked in the ultrasonic tank. Got another top tip, and I just tried it, and the jury's out for me on whether it is an improvement on any of my carb cleaning processes, because I've been cleaning carbs for knocking on the door of 30 years. So yeah, if I hear of a new technique that somebody's using and I think it might add to my workflow, then I'll try it. You know, I'll flash a picture on the screen. You know those valeting steamy machines you get? Somebody was telling me that they use a steamer to blow through all the orifices in the carburetor bodies, and I just gave that a try. I did it after they came out of the ultrasonic tank. I just blew hot steam down all the passageways. Yeah, I'm going to try it a few more times. I'm not sure whether it's really adding anything to the process, but just thought I'd share that with you. So you know what the jets looked like before. They were pretty green and furry, and now they look like that. That's after a couple of changes of chemical, but they're just raw brass. There is, yeah, super duper clean. Seen that 100 times. The carb rubbers, I put them in the ultrasonic tank and gave them a real good cook and a clean. I can't get new ones. I can only get genuine Yamaha ones. I think I said that, didn't I? So I'm going with these. They're nice and rubbery. The clips have been through the ultrasonic tank. They're all nice. Everything's laid out, ready to go. New float bowl gaskets, new float needle valves. I don't know what that's doing there. That's nothing to do with it. So that's that. Time lapse these bad boys back together. Oh, all the O-rings on all these jobby Watsits are all replaced with new. Even the screws have been ultrasonically cleaned. They just got a bit of GT85 on them. I think I'll probably treat it to some new screws though, to be honest. Some of these have got apprentice marks on them, so you know, going to make it as nice as humanly possible. Yeah, not much more to say really. I've got a good couple of hours of fighting putting these back together, and then we'll get them on the bike. I've just had a look. We talked earlier in the video, I think, didn't we, about oil contamination with fuel. I've just looked at the sight glass and it seems to be over full, and it does smell a bit petrol-y in there, so I'm going to change the oil before I try and run it. Oh, there's a set of spark plugs to go in it as well, isn't there, that the owners provided. Did I mention that previously? Yeah, you can't, just don't chance running it. If you've got any concern at all about the oil being contaminated with fuel, just for the sake and the cost of a bottle of oil, I just don't do it. Just don't do it, honestly. You'll be so upset with yourself if you damage the engine by running it with contaminated oil. Right, okay, stop talking and do some work. Okie dokie, there they are. They've been sat with fuel to them for an hour or so, just making sure everything stays dry, no leaks. Drained them out and refilled them. Yeah, you don't want to obviously, if you've got the facility to test them on the bench, do that, because you don't want to get them on the bike. These are fairly easy to get on and off, but some carburetors are an absolute pain in the bottom, so test for leaks before you fit them, otherwise you could be making work for yourself, couldn't you? Oil's draining out the bike as we speak. Let's get a new filter on it, put some fresh oil in it. There's a set of plugs to go in. Let's get these on, let's see what it runs like. Righty-ho, carbs are on. That was pretty uneventful, to be honest with you. Just those rubbers are nice and supple still, they just popped on, done all the clips up, throttle cables, a little bit of a fight, but easy enough. I've got a new, can you see that in this shot? I've got a new fuel filter. I've got a fuel supply hooked up to it. I've just primed the pump and it's filled the carbs up. Let's in fact tuck that up under there out the way just for a second. Coils are on. See if it'll go. No reason why it won't. So it stood for years and years and years. However, I already know that the owner has tried to start it and it cranks over okay. So this isn't first turn of the crankshaft. If it was me and it had been stood for however many years it stood for, they're easy to get to. There's a bung on the end of the crankshaft. I'd probably, when the plugs were out, I would have turned it over by hand. Just with a ratchet, just because. But that ship has already sailed, so I'm just going to go straight in and try and get it to start. Okay, vacuum gauges are hooked up as well. What an absolute blooming nightmare they are to get the vacuum takeoffs out of these. Anyway, okay, I'm stalling. Let's full choke, contact. Come on, you know you want to. Nearly. Well, there we go. No smoke yet. Let it get a bit of heat into it. Right, I don't want to go down a carburetor balancing rabbit hole right now, but see how they're out of balance. They were as close as I could get them on the bench, okay, just by eyeballing them. You know, people say have the revs up a little bit, so we're at about 1300 revs now. If I raise the RPM a bit, right, look how the gauges are reading now. At lower RPM, the amount they're out of balance is amplified. Does that make sense? Anyway, that's not what this video is. Let me get it properly warm and let's synchronize them, and then that'll be the end of the video. Right then, let's bring that idle down a tad. I think we're pretty much in the ballpark now. Maybe one final little tweak. I tell you what, guys, the tiniest little bit of adjustment. What you can see is I'm having to stop the engine, and we've talked about these carbs before, haven't we? I'm having to stop the engine so I can get my screwdriver on the adjusting screw and then restart. Anybody that thinks they can fucking bench balance a carburetor is talking out of their fucking arse. But I'm telling you, the tiniest little bit of movement on the screw, like a 15th of a fucking turn of it, is enough to move the vacuum gauges. Right, I'm going to call that done. yeah, you can get them in the ballpark on the bench, but the final balance has got to be done on the bike, because, fucking hell, waffle on, every single engine and every single cylinder of every single engine technically is slightly, what's the word, volumetrically efficient. They're all different. I would wager, correct me in the comments, if I put these carburetors on another engine, they might be slightly different in terms of the vacuum they'd read. But that, you couldn't really do that as a proper test, because the act of pulling the carbs off the manifolds and putting back on is you're going to send them out of balance anyway slightly. Fucking hell. Okay, stop talking. I'm going to put this all back together now. There's some little velocity stacks to go on here, the airbox on, this heat shield back in place, some vacuum pipes and stuff. Let's get it all back together, put the tank on, and then I'll say my goodbyes. Well, that's annoying. See that? Oh, okay. Well, it's all back together. Airbox is all on, tank's on. Fuel tap's leaking. I just put a couple of gallons of fuel in the tank, and it's, yeah. How irritating. Okay, I think we're going to call this the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you can spare me a subscribe, you can do that down below. I'd really appreciate it. You know, it's not lost on me. Time is your most valuable asset, isn't it? And you spend time watching me fighting with motorbikes. Yeah, it's definitely not lost on me. It's humbling. All the kind comments, all the views I get. I really appreciate all of you. Be safe. Keep it shiny side up. See you next Friday.